Authenticity Radio.
You are listening to Slade Suter.
Hey, welcome. Grab a seat anywhere. No, we don't have any menus. The only thing we have today is the freedom to express who you truly are. We call it Authenticity Radio. You'll like it, don't worry. Let me go grab the host. He's got the hospitality of a fat and jolly innkeeper. He's a good guy. Slade Suter.
And welcome to you. This is Slade Suter. And I am broadcasting from the Authenticity Radio Studios. Today's broadcast began last year. I read an article entitled Let Go of the Chains of Victimhood. Let Go of the Chains of Victimhood. The author of this article became an instant hero of mine, and I made a commitment to myself to pursue this person and invite them to Authenticity Radio. Well, today I am very excited to announce that Charles Trimble, the author of this article, is joining us today. Now, Charles is a mixed blood Native American Indian. He's from the Ogallala Lakota tribe. And for those who are trying to place this, it's in South Dakota in the Pine Ridge Reservation. Now, Charles happens to be one of the original founders of the American Indian Press Association, and it has transformed into the Native American Journalists Association over the years. So Charles has been very instrumental in the beginning of this press association. He is also the author of lyeska, which is a Lakota word and translated into mixed blood. And also I believe that there's a secondary translation of the spirit world. So without any further ado, I would like to welcome you, Charles Trimble, to Authenticity Radio.
My pleasure.
Charles, as I said before, you are a hero of mine.
Well, thank you.
So, Charles, you wrote this article, Letting Go of the Chains of Victimhood.
Yeah, Breaking the Chains of Victimhood is what the title of the essay.
Oh, breaking the chains of victimhood. I'm sorry about that. Charles, when we were talking before, offline, you mentioned that when you wrote this article, you met with quite a bit of resistance. Did you not?
Yes, I did. Yeah, quite a bit. And to people who had accused me of blaming the victims for the problems that they continue to encounter as, trying to live in a new world, so to speak. But I wasn't doing that. I was just encouraging them that we've got to sometime put that aside.
This request of putting it aside is exactly what has captivated me, and it's so empowering. However, before we get too far, I would like to regress for our listeners so that they can get an idea of who you are and the journey that you've been traveling, Charles. So can you please share a little of your journey with us?
Sure. First of all, lyeska, the title of my book, I had thought a lot about what I should title the book, and actually it's made up of many of the essays and columns that I had written on various topics over the past decade or so. But lyeska is a term meaning mixed blood. Iye is the Lakota word meaning he speaks, and ska is white. So he speaks white is what they called the people. My father was white, my mother was Lakota, my mother was Oglala. And so I'm that mixed blood. And in the past years, especially in the early years of contact between the Lakota and white settlers, explorers, hunters. They called, if a person married into the tribe, which was usually the case, a man marrying into the tribe, and his children in that tribe would be called lyeska, because invariably they could speak English, and they were always called upon to interpret or translate for their people because they knew both languages. And so that's why they got the name lyeska, which also means interpreter. You mentioned that it also meant the spirit world, but that wasn't the case. That the translator, the lyeska I had read subsequently, was also a figure who translated between the spirit world and the living world. And so, but that isn't the context that I chose. I was a lyeska because I was half white. And you got also, lyeska could be used as a dirty word. You know, they say, oh, he's one of those darn lieskas, so, because a lot of the people who could speak both languages, and whoever they were interpreting for didn't understand what they were saying in the other language, so you could take license. And I'm sure throughout history, a number of lieskas were crooks. You know, they were arranging things for their own benefit rather than the people they were translating for. So anyway, that's why they also got kind of a bad name too. And I've been a good lyeska, and I've never been a crook, but I've been referred to probably as a damned lyeska.
Well, you are the best type of lyeska I know. And speaking of which, how do our listeners get a hold of your book, lyeska?
I think just go online. Amazon uses it. They do most of the sales of my book.
Okay.
I'm also I have a website called Iktomis Web. That's IKTOMISWEB.com. It's so, and I think that'll lead you to my ordering my book as well.
So Iktomis Web, IKTOMISWEB.com, and we will go ahead and place this next to the broadcast as well. And I forgot, Charles, to introduce this piece of your history as well. You were the National Congress representative for the Native American Indians. What was that title?
Oh, I was the executive director of the National Congress of American Indians, which is it represents the Indian tribes, and it is owned and run by the Indian tribes. And it works in Washington. It's operated in Washington to represent the tribes and to lobby for the tribes.
Okay, that seems to be another position of lyeska on your part, doesn't it?
Yeah, yes.
So you were speaking on behalf of the tribes in the United States of America.
Yeah, I was carrying the message, really, because we had conventions in which the tribes would work out their consensus on various pieces of legislation that were up for consideration, or various policies. And so I wasn't in there because I was any kind of a Superman, but I was able to project exactly what they were saying to Washington D.C. because they had it their consensus was in form of a resolution that they had voted upon and accepted, and so that's what I did. Was I carried forth their message on their behalf.
And Charles, as a spokesperson for the Native American people, when did you start sensing a need that something needed to change?
Well, that was I arrived at that conclusion quite a ways after I was with the National Congress of American Indians, but some of the things that I had, was very aware of as a result was the need for development in Indian country, the need for jobs, the need for income, because what you had for so many years was a growing dependency on the part of many native peoples on the federal government. And that was in response to the treaties that they had to do these things. This is what they promised the Indian people. But, once you become dependent upon the United States or any other government for almost your daily life, for your education, your health, and your sustenance, your everything, then they can do pretty much what they want with you and control you. And so the Indians were losing a lot of their land that they had for centuries, their homelands, and losing their rights, their ability to work in and participate in a new world. And so that was what I was concerned about. And so that came after, but it was based on a lot of my observations and my experiences in the National Congress. I would not ever try to say that the Indians weren't victims, because, from the earliest days, when Columbus stepped ashore, you had efforts to enslave them, to work them to death, to kill them, and that became unacceptable, especially the slaughtering, the killing, and the taking of their lands. And even Pope Paul III, I think it was back in the early 1500s, came through with a papal bull called Sublimus Deus, in which he said that Native Americans were people. They weren't animals. They weren't lesser humans. They were people. And that as people, they had a right to property, they had a right to freedom, and a right to live. And so basically, coming out as a papal bull, it became a mortal sin to kill them. And with all of the conquistadors and everybody being Catholic, they had to find another way. When you come ashore, and this becomes a great big opportunity for anybody. In Europe, much of Europe, you can only own land in Europe if you were among the royalty or among the nobility of some sort. But you could come over here and all of a sudden you can own land. And this became a huge attraction. And so as the people came over to the United States, the big question arose, what are we going to do with the people who own it now? Who even the Pope had misowned their land and stuff like that. What are you going to do with them? So they went into, a process of physical attrition, which include pestilence, warfare, forced removal, starvation as a result of killing all their herds, and finally concentration on the reservations. And then there was a cultural attrition attached to this too, and that was to take away their governance, their means of tribal governments, of control, or governing themselves. It took away their religion, their language, and forced them into a new form of education, the boarding school. So, with all of that, there are two things that it's amazing that they're still with us. Okay, but anyway, so, we're victims. We are. There's no question about it, and we're still suffering from it because we're still among the poorest in the whole nation. We're still, the highest infant mortality, the lowest life expectancy, the highest this and the lowest that. I used to, when I was testifying before Congress, I would have I would start with a brief statement with what I called a litany of woe, about that. Highest infant mortality, lowest life expectancy, highest rate of this, and eventually the highest rate of suicide among our youth. To give an example of what is happening, what has happened to us over the years because of failed and sometimes malicious federal policy and stuff. So I wasn't at all denying that we are victims and that we should resent that. But we can't continue to let it eat us, eat away at our souls and our bodies and our health and at our children. That's what concerned me, that the more we teach this history to them, and they have a right to know their history, but the more we do it and sometimes even exaggerate it, the more we are dragging them into sometime even convincing themselves that they have no chance in the world. Where they do, my God, there are schools that are turning out Indian children on the reservation that are entering fine colleges now and getting degrees and, increasingly, but we can't hold them back by constantly telling them that they should be resentful, or anything like that, by just continuously harping on our history of victimhood.
Yeah, it seems to capture time, doesn't it? So
yes, it does.
So you are specifically talking about keeping a people in a disempowered state.
Yes, exactly. Or keeping ourselves in that state.
So what kind of a response did you get when you expressed yourself?
Yeah. Well, I got a lot of good response, and there was one especially, and it was a professor by the name of Bill Yellowtail, and he is of the Crow tribe, and he's a professor at Montana State University, but he wrote a beautiful piece called The Dignity of Indian Self-Sufficiency. Now, here is a full-blood man, educated one, and he writes, "Hopelessness is killing Indian people even more surely than fry bread. But neither tragedy is necessary. We must change our internal compass to find hope and success. Only we can reorient ourselves." And he goes on, "The culture of despair worries me more than anything. A destructive dissonance has risen between our revered traditional culture and our day-to-day way of life. Dependency and despondency have beaten down self-sufficiency and dignity. A generational downward spiral of despair has created what sociologists call learned hopelessness or helplessness, a sense of no personal responsibility and intergenerational trauma, a lack of willpower almost hereditarily transmitted." And I think that says it better than I ever could. And I copied from him and got to know him. He's a brilliant man. But that's what it is, that we can convince ourselves that we're hopeless. And so we have this, almost in some reservations, it's like what would you call it, a spread of disease, of the youth suicides. And so these are people without hope. These are the kids who have written off the world in a very, very young age, from 9 or 10 or, through high school, killing themselves, OD, taking poisons or drugs or whatever, and then, or hanging themselves.
Oh, dear.
So those are the things I'm concerned about, that we can't, we've got to keep in mind what has happened to us, and for the sake of never letting it happen again. I also, to compare us with the Jews on what they've been through, and yet, you find the heads, or the composers of most of the stuff on Broadway, Jewish people, and many of the great composers and the great musicians have been Jews, and so how have they done it? Although I understand that they also suffer from what is called intergenerational trauma.
Yeah, tell me more about that, because it does seem to pass from generation to generation.
Yes, it does. In fact, I really doubted that, because it has become kind of a magic, what do you call it?
Like a cliche?
Not a cliche. It's just that it covers all problems on the reservation. So a child kills himself or herself, and they say, well, it's intergenerational trauma. We can't establish businesses on the reservation. It's intergenerational trauma. We can't, do whatever it is. Everything is written off as intergenerational trauma, and that is a part of the hopelessness, because there's nothing you can do about intergenerational trauma unless you can forget history. See, history is going to always be there, and it's always going to be as bad. In some ways, or at least the Holocaust will always be bad in the memory of the Jews, and what has happened to the Indian people will always be bad in our history and in our memory. But there's some place you've got to say, well, I can do better than that. I can compete with any of these white folks, for the sake of another word at this point, just to make a point. That I can do these things. I can live a better life. I don't have to, suffer. I'm never, ever going to forget what happened to my ancestors, but I'm not going to also let it stop me here.
It's dignity, isn't it? Before one even has the ability to break the chains of victimhood, they have to be able to see the chains that exist. And a way to be able to do that is through dignity, isn't it? Recognizing one's dignity, and then in the process of reclaiming it.
Yes. On dignity, a good friend of mine, his name is Sam Deloria. He's a brother. We've kind of adopted each other as brothers.
I like that.
He was chairing a meeting at the National Congress of American Indians one time during their convention, a huge meeting, and one fairly younger man stood up and said, "We need to make the government give our dignity back to us." And this really touched something off with Sam, and he said, "Look, dignity cannot be taken from you, and it can't be given to you, And he said, if you want dignity, look around you. Look around this whole room. Here is a bunch of dignity. And that's the truth. Our leaders through the ages have been, very dignified people that have gone into Washington, D.C., the chiefs of old, And they knew what they were saying. They were great orators. And wearing their buckskins and feathers, they were center of attention in the East. And they used that attention to give voice to their people and what was happening to them. So, that dignity is there, and it can be ours. But forgetting that we're no longer put upon like we were before kind of gives credit to a lot of our leaders who made sure that I can take some credit. Not an awful lot, but changing policy in Washington, D.C. to fight for new legislation that provided better health care and to better education and better self-governance, for the Indian people. And so, you just have to do that.
And lyeska stepped up for the job.
Yeah, I guess so. It helped me understand both sides.
Well, yeah, I really love the title, lyeska, and the voice that you speak with.
Well, I'm glad, yeah. I tried to make sense and yet not try to put down our people. You can't, they are victims. And but the thing is we can also help ourselves, and we shouldn't just wallow in victimhood and think of ourselves as helpless and hopeless when we're not. We're fighters.
And recovering your collective spirit.
Right.
It seems like that's the key word, isn't it? Recovery of.
I think so, yes. Recovering, because nobody can do it for you. You've got to do it. Nobody can help us. If you really come down to it, they can be generous with resources, but ultimately the whole decision, the whole process is ours, and that's what it comes down to, because people have tried to help us for ages. Good people.
Mm-hmm.
And supposedly even the government, when they owed us services and stuff like that, the delivery of those services was not given in good spirit. And so, but when it really comes down to it, only we can do it, and we can't do it if we're convinced that we're hopeless.
So it's letting go of the chains.
Right, exactly, yeah.
And then on the other hand, it's about reclaiming other things like your own language, the power of the language, the power of the word, of your own words, like the reclaiming of the Lakota language, or the revival of the Lakota language. Is the Lakota language being spoken?
Yeah, a lot of the younger leaders have observed that when you start taking back those things that were powerful, important things in your culture, which includes your language and some of your definitely spirituality. And I'm not saying religion here, I'm saying spirituality. And reclaiming those things, and also reclaiming your self-government. And a lot of that is happening now. Some of it as a result of legislation we got passed in the 1970s, like the Tribal Self-Determination Act and some like those things. But and the language, very important. And I went to a Catholic boarding school, and those years of boarding schools were considered horror. They were, some people paint as almost out of Dickens, Charles Dickens. But so I went 12 years. I was put in the school when I was 4 years old.
Oh, wow.
And I went through 12 years of that, but I learned a heck of a lot, and the biggest thing I learned was survival. And you come out of there, it's like being in a Marine boot camp or something like that. You come out pretty tough. So, and knowledgeable, because they did teach us. It was a Catholic boarding school, and now it's Red Cloud Indian School, and they are putting out scholars that you wouldn't believe, just tremendous scholars.
Wow.
With their education system, and it was referred to. Pine Ridge, my reservation, has a lot of the problems of the northern plains, including the high rate of suicides and alcoholism, domestic abuse and rape, and just a crime, and drugs and gangs. But one bright light to me there is Red Cloud Indian School. And other schools on the reservation that have been taken over by the tribe and taken out of the hands of the government are also improving and doing wonderful things. So there's hope there.
I just could only imagine the devastation of how I would feel being in the environment of what you just described, and the pride that I would also feel seeing a school like Red Cloud turning things around to a point.
Uh-huh.
In the process of reclaiming an identity and heritage, or at least recognizing an identity and heritage.
Sure, and reclaiming was good.
In your opinion, are you moving forward as a people and as a culture? Are you growing into something that you were and into something new?
Oh, yes. Overall, I've just seen wonderful strides, but we got to keep being patient. We can't stop that process and say, hey, wait a minute, we're not. And also, we don't have to, what would you call it, be atavistic. We don't have to say that, well, we're going to throw everything white out the window and we're going back to what we were in the late 1800s, let's say. Mm-hmm. Including governance and culture and everything else like that. That's impossible too. Mm-hmm. But but we've got to say we can do it on our own terms. Mm-hmm. We can still be Lakota, and we can still go out there and do everything that people are doing. We can become scientists. We can become managers. We can become, whatever, entrepreneurs. And I think that's the attitude we need to take, to finally accept our history and understand it, but not let anything drag us down.
And that's kind of like a key ingredient right there.
Yes, absolutely.
It's kind of like the process of unfreezing oneself from the past, or at least the victimhood of the past.
Right.
You mentioned that you were also in the process of reclaiming your spirituality.
Yes.
What does that mean? Tell me more about this.
It's been brought to my attention. I had never thought of it before, but an older man said, we weren't religious people, but we were spiritual people. And if you really look at it, not so much now, but in the past, holy men were the carriers of, and these holy men weren't ordained. They became holy men because they did things, and the community respected them and revered them in a lot of ways. And that's how they including healing, including advising, great services that they provide. And then I heard Lakota philosophy. I'd never thought of that. People would say Lakota mythology or anything else, but not Lakota philosophy. And yet it is there, the great values of the Lakota people and all of that. That's part of the spirituality of the people. And the way they treat each other and their understanding of each other is part of the spirituality. So it isn't, there's never been a Ayatollah or a Pope or a bishop among the Indian people. They had very respected, widely, intertribally respected holy men, but nobody, there was no dogma. It was, that they would have you believe this, but it's up to you. We respect you and your mind and your soul. And so that's what the spirituality is. And a lot of the younger spiritualists are trying to turn it into a religion. And a lot of people say, well, you destroyed our religion. In fact, I said that earlier, But you can't destroy our spirituality. That's in our soul. But you destroyed our ability to practice it. There could no longer be a Sundance. There could no longer be UEP ceremonies or any other healing ceremonies. It was outlawed by the government, and they were strict about it. So that's how they tried to kill off that religious aspect of our lives.
Well, that's so sad. This is a sad part of history, and it seems like it repeats itself through history. Is that when we're afraid of something, we push it away, we condemn it or prohibit it, and in this case, this seems the same. So you're saying that the spirituality is in process of being recovered?
I think yes, and I think that even Christians among the tribes, and that Christianity is taken a strong hold in the South. There are a lot of native people who are Baptists, and up in the northern tribes, there are certain tribes that are very strongly Catholic, let's say, and others that are very strongly Episcopalian, and the Mormons have their foothold somewhere. But even there, you're finding more and more. First of all, a respect on the part of those churches for the sacredness of Lakota and other tribes, symbols, practices, a greater tolerance on the part of those churches. And so it's nothing to see a priest saying Mass and incorporating, let's say, the sacred pipe in there. In the not as the tribes would, but paying respect to it, to the pipe.
Now, how about chiefs, elders, and wise men? Are they recognized? Are there current elders, wise men recognized throughout the tribes?
I think all the tribes have elders. They don't call them chiefs, although in some tribes they'll refer to them as chiefs, because in most instances they don't hold the power of governance. But they are very powerful in their influence, and usually are invariably good people, who can wisely advise other leaders. And so you have those in all tribes, and you have some powerful holy men too, who are recognized in their community first of all, within their tribe, and then among other tribes as well. Who carry an awful lot of influence, and for the good. Like I say, there are no ayatollahs. Nothing saying necessarily bad about the ayatollahs, but you don't find that power.
How would that look like if I wanted to go and to sit down and have a talk with a holy man? Is that possible today?
I think if you went to a reservation and you knew of a certain holy man you wanted to talk to, certainly you could arrange to talk with him or her, a holy person, I should say. And that person would certainly listen to you. But you'd find one thing, first of all, is that most likely you will find a person with a great sense of humor. And, just like the Dalai Lama has a wicked sense of humor. He's just wonderful, and he's a warm person, and that's what you'll find among holy men too. And a lot of times they'll tease you. You come up and they'll sound just serious as heck and tell you whatever they want to tell you.
With a straight face,
kind of play around with you. But they don't do this without any evil intent. It's to have a little fun. But they would not evade talking about anything that you wanted to know, to give you an understanding of what they're all about and what the people are all about. If you came with good intents too, they can tell that, I think.
Well, there you go. That's really key right there, isn't it?
What?
If a person comes with good intention, it could be experienced, felt, and known.
They are very spiritual people, and they could see. A good book that I'd like to recommend. One good book. There are a number of them, but I'm currently working on a project to get the book on read, recorded, and I'm part of that. But it's called Black Elk Speaks.
Yeah, I have it. It's written by Neihart.
Right, John Neihart, G. Neihart, a wonderful, wonderful man, a great poet, and just a great writer. And but I think that the story he tells, and one of the things I'm addressing in there is that he's been accused of taking license with Black Elk's words. That if it was told by the old man Black Elk, and to that old man's son, who wasn't a lyeska. He was a lyeska in that he interpreted, but I think he was full-blood himself. And from his son, who could speak English, to John Neihart's young daughter, who could take shorthand, and then John had to write from those notes, but although he heard them. And so there was criticism, that Black Elk never really said those words. But I really doubt that his words are beautiful. They are eloquent. And but oratory was always important to the Lakota leaders as well as other tribal leaders. The oratory of a chief was a good part of his leadership, and so that was very important. So Neihart's use of metaphor, let's say, was not an exaggeration, or it was not taking license with Neihart. He was right on the money. He was telling it better than, let's say, an anthropologist would ever tell it. You know, he wasn't trying to be scientific and all of this. He was doing his best to, and Neihart was a spiritualist himself. And so when he was talking to a powerful holy man, they understood each other. They knew each other from the very beginning. And so, you know, that's kind of what it is.
So that's an example of the power of narrative and storytelling.
Absolutely, absolutely. You know, the oral histories, the oral traditions of the tribes required, you know, wonderful storytelling and eloquence.
So how does that impact Native American youth, storytelling and narrative today?
Well, right now, you know, you're really competing now. There isn't a child in Indian country, I doubt, that doesn't know a computer, doesn't use a computer every day, and has access to the internet and to TV and everything, and that kind of eats away at your own story, your own history, I think, or it could, if the tribes don't make an effort to preserve and pass on their histories and their cultures, including the oral histories.
Oral history, well, that's, you're passing on life. That's life.
That's life.
And this is how you pass this life on from one generation to another.
Yeah, and in the right context, in the right spirit, not to make that child resentful or to make that child, you know, to discourage that child from anything. It's got to be told accurately, dispassionately, as fact.
So something so important in history, and I'm going to be relaying on it. I have the tremendous responsibility to transmit in narrative form a story, and what a gift it is to not influence that story with my own biases, with my own view and opinions.
I can understand, too, someone telling, you know, about, let's say, the slaughter at Wounded Knee, and not feeling in your soul and not coming out of your voice, you know, how you feel about that, the disgust, you know, you must feel about that, you know, about the slaughter of men, women, and infants, you know, by the U.S. cavalry. And so, you see, you even get it from when I talk about it, because I can't always talk about it dispassionately. But again, no matter how passionately, you're still being truthful, because it was that bad.
Yeah, so it's another example of how life and history are living on through your words.
Right.
Wow, Chuck, you are a powerful man.
Oh, no, I don't know about that. I'm an old man.
Well, then you're an old, powerful lyeska.
Okay, I'll buy that.
Okay, good. So Charles, I ask my guests on this program for their message to humanity. So I turn to you, Charles Trimble. What is your message that you would like to deliver to humanity?
My message would be, I think, beyond Native American needs, to understand other people, to understand, as you know, I would like them to understand Lakotas and all Native peoples in this country, but all Native peoples in the world, the indigenous peoples who were conquered and colonized and had to survive destruction, and that they would be understood and assisted, you know, with what's available in the United Nations and various other arenas to help those people. That would be my message.
Okay, humanity. Understanding other Native peoples around this world.
Yes, especially the situation with the indigenous peoples of, especially the Western Hemisphere. And, well, it's got to include Africa, but sometimes I just wonder what can be done there.
Chuck Trimble, thank you so much for joining us on Authenticity Radio today.
My pleasure. Good luck to you.
Thank you, Charles. And this is Slade Suter. Until next time, be authentic, be true, be aware of the indigenous people of this world, and be free.
Real people and real authentic talk. This is Authenticity Radio. Conflict is a choice you know in order to gain a new perspective and how to resolve conflict in your organization, business, or family. Go to AuthenticityRadio.com.
Come on! This is Authenticity Radio. Authenticity Radio with Slade Suter.